Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video, but tell you now, this is the most important video you will ever watch if you actually want to get somewhere in Faction Wars. This is going to be the all-encompassing, the video. It's not a short one, guys, but I'm going to bookmark different factions in this video. It is going to be the one which helps you build team synergy for every faction in the game. I would like you guys to share this video with your communities. Get it out there. Help me push this video to the community because I think it will genuinely help people do this piece of work. Now, what we're going to do as well is follow this video up with how to beat faction war bosses. I'll do it as a separate video because I want it to be quite detailed, taking on every single boss, how you beat them, what you need to do. So, a lot of people said to me, can you add faction wars, a column on your tier sheet, tier list for champions for faction wars? And it's been going through my head. I'm like, if I just throw a number for faction wars on a tier list, you guys might build up 5 champions and think, why can I not do this faction? And the main reason will be because you do not understand team synergy. So what I've done, and this was a massive piece of work actually, guys, so please like the video, please share it, please comment, because this type of stuff takes a ton of time. I've done a separate sheet which tells you how to build team synergy for every single faction. Let's get into it. Before we go there, I'm just going to remind you of some really key things to synergy and control in Faction Wars. Faction Wars is not about building 5 massive hitters and watching them cruise their way through the dungeons, right? You will lose. You will lose. In fact, damage dealers are the least important champions in Faction Wars. Without a doubt, I could do Faction Wars easier with a whole bunch of control champions, healing champions than I can with damage dealers. So here are 6 things we are looking for in our Faction War team. First one, a decreased defense champion, ideally an AoE decreased defense champion. This makes your champions hit a ton harder. I've said this before, AoE decreased defense I think is the most important skill for a Faction War team if you can get it. Next one is about crowd control. Dealing with those hard-hitting mobs when you get further into Faction Wars is a must. So the more crowd control you've got, the less damage you take. Next one, some form of healer, or if you don't have a healer, life steal gear, because you need everybody to be alive if you want to get 3 stars on these levels. Next one up is revive champions. They are gold dust and they are insanely strong for Faction Wars, again for the same reason. You might have someone who keeps going down. He's a level 50. He's your only level 50 you got left. He's on the floor. He wants some milk. He keeps crying into it. You pick him up right at the end. You get your 3 stars. You move on to the next level. That's why revive champions are cool. We do need some damage in the comps. But don't forget, just having masteries is damage enough sometimes. Just having War Master, that can be your equivalent of damage on a non-damaged champion. So don't think that damage dealers means that you need all your hard hitters. Actually, you can get damage in different ways. And then the last one here is turn meter control. That's both in terms of speeding you up, slowing down your enemy, dropping a full turn meter bar, all that type of stuff. It all helps you with Faction Wars. So let's dive into the first faction. Okay, guys, here we go. This is what I've built. So I've built a map, a team synergy map for every single faction with fancy pictures, I might add. This is going to be your Faction War guide for epics and rares in the game. And this is going to help you decide with the champions that you've got available, who should I build, how much value will they bring to my team, and what different roles are they doing? What different roles are they bringing to my team that are going to help me get through the faction? So the key areas I look for are AoE decreased defense, damage dealers, AoE decreased attack. That means you take less damage. Crowd control champs, healers, protectors, revive champions, turn meter control champions. That's my priorities when I'm trying to build a synergy of a team. You'll see some people double up. Stag Knight can do 2 things. So if they double up, you get their picture twice. So at a glance, you can say, you know what? It feels like Oathbound brings us a lot of value. Stag Knight gives a lot of value. Actually, Azure is in 2 spots as well. Preserver brings a bit of value. So between epics and rares that you've got, you can start to decide which ones should come in and play a role for me. I have not added legendary champions onto this list. Pretty much because legendary champions are going to be in your team. Like, even the low bob legendary champions pretty much are going to be in your team. They're going to be better than, you know, the preserver who's coming in as a rare in most situations. So, you know, you can kind of fill in which gaps you've got, which legendaries do some jobs for you already, and then decide out of the champions you've got in your pool, who should I work on to get my champions up to a right level to be able to deal with faction wars. In my second video, I'm going to be talking about what level champions I think you need to beat certain stages of bosses. That's going to come in the boss video. So you can see here, God tier champion for me, Stag Knight fills 2 roles, Oathbound 2 roles, Azure's got a God tier role and a great role. And then there's some others that can kind of fill gaps. Someone like Lordly Legionary, who's a free champion, can come in and do some turn meter control. Some of the things like turn meter control are way more value when you're on a boss fight compared to on just sort of general wave fights. So this column here, the whole turn meter control, is probably more value when you're on bosses. So you can see the kind of champions here. There's rares in this as well: Preserver, Mimrodon, Cataract, Valerie, all coming in to the mix. And when we go to different factions, you can see some of them, there's way more options. Some of them, there's literally like hardly any options. And it might be, you know, you don't own a Tyrell, but you do have a Fencer, so you can get like a weak version decreased defense off. It's still better than no version decreased defense. It might be that you've got a Jingle Hunter that you made for the arena one day. You go back to that Jingle Hunter and realize actually he's brilliant for crowd control. So you can bring him in to a team here. Apothecary, top tiering on a couple of areas. Vergis that you might not know about is actually a real top tier protector. A lot of people ask me my opinion on like a Thanassel. Well, he's a good protector, but he doesn't do anything else. So you kind of have to make your own decisions on that. Even Interceptor that we don't see a lot played, she actually can do an okay job in 2 areas of the game. So, you know, if you're looking for that champion just to get to level 50, that might give you a bit of turn meter control and crowd control, Interceptor could be the one for you. So let's move on to Sacred Order. Sacred Order, no AoE decreased defense champions at all outside of legendaries, which means if you've got no AoE decreased defense, you need more crowd control or more protection or revive champions, because it's going to take you a ton more time to deal with the waves. So someone like a Lightsworn comes in 3 different places: turn meter control, revive, and healer protector. So he's got decreased speed, he's got actual turn meter reduction, he's got a revive on death ability, which is why it's just in the OK box, and he's got some increased defense abilities as well. So really solid champion. You've got other ones in there which you know, Mistress of Trash, we've talked about her in the past. Actually for Faction War, she's got a revive and she's got some protection as well, healing and protection. So for Faction War, she's actually well worth a level 50. Hope is kind of coming into the meta now, more like a protector stroke debuff remover, so she can be pretty strong here. Phoenix actually does turn meter and he does a ton of damage. Really good for faction wars. And you've even got people like Templar who could come in and do a lot of work in terms of crowd control. This faction lacks crowd control, so someone like a Templar, you know, if you don't have many legendaries here, can come in and do some work for you. Cardinal is actually MVP of the revive. She will help you 3-star if you've got her massively. Just need to build her as a tank. Okay, let's move on to Barbarians. So Barbarians, pretty well fleshed out teams now. They've improved quite a bit since the buffs. A lot of Barbarians got buffs. But you'll see here, you've got top tiering. You've got top tier and rare champions. So top tier, Soul Bond in damage and turn meter control. You've got War Maiden as top tier AoE decreased defense, better than any other champion unless you get into like legendary status. Jotun is now hitting people for damage, so he can come in and do some good damage for you. Marked is pretty MVP on boss fights. She's got block debuffs, which is really useful in a lot of the boss fights. Again, I'll go into that in the follow-up video. Sky Touch here, really good in terms of protection. She's actually got a revive on death, so she probably could, that's meant to be there, she could just squeeze in, do a bit of revive on death for you. She also does some heals and protection, so she's actually a really solid champ. Anointed comes in 2 areas here, crowd control and turn meter control. And even someone like Ator, actually, with his provoke, is really good for crowd control in this faction. One of the toughest things you've got in this faction is a lack of crowd control, so he can come in and do a job. Hykertoon, free champion, really, really solid for this area. Let's go into Ogryn Tribes. So Ogryn Tribes is like really well fleshed out in the epics and the rare category. One of the things they lack is a proper revive. So I've got here like a unkillable, which I put on Maneater. It's like an okay version of a, it's not revive, it's like a don't kill me type of thing. So I thought I'd throw him into that. But you can see Maneater pops up in 4 spots on this grid. He's an MVP. Grush, the free champion, is brilliant for faction wars, guys. Like, he's brilliant anyway in the game, but decrease attack, AoE, good damage, heal and protection, really, really good champion. Skull Crusher comes in a couple of times as well. Bellower, if you put Bellower in a stun set, he's got brilliant crowd control. He can do damage for you as well. A lot of people run 2 Bellowers if they need to. You can see him here in the small version AoE decreased defense, small version AoE decreased attack. That's why he's in that OK column. But I've run 2 Bellowers in Faction Wars for a long time because I didn't have a bunch of the other good epics at the time. Shatterbones comes in here as a really solid champion. Great turn meter control, good damage as well. And then there's a couple which you probably wouldn't really even think to build who can do some work. So Towering Titan and Cagebreaker individually are quite good with crowd control. Together, they're actually quite strong. So Towering Titan actually gives you a bit of protection as well. And there's a couple of rares in here which you might not have heard of. Fortress Goon and Flesh Eater, both able to do a bit of work for you. Stone Skin has actually got quite a good decreased speed as well. So there's a few unknowns in there, I'd say. A few to look out for. But just make sure you get that team synergy. But I'd say Bellower, Maneater, and Grush are like MVPs in this faction. Let's go on to Lizardmen. Lizardmen, you can see it, guys. You can visibly see how hard this faction is. Quite frankly, if you do not own a Draco or a like a Krisk, or I think Krisk is Lizardman, yeah, you're struggling. Fushan's brilliant, but if you do not own any of those big legendary champions, finishing Lizardman faction is hard. It's really, really hard. So you've got people like Haruspex coming in big here, avoid rare, great turn meter control. He's also got a revive ability. So I use him in my level 21 stuff. I literally just leveled him for level 21 stuff. Jared is a good protector. You've got Jarang. He's actually a terrible champion, if I'm honest, but he kind of does an okay job of throwing out some decreased defenses, some decreased attacks, and some crowd control. He's a terrible champion, but they've got such limited options that you might need to just build him out. Broadmoor probably only needs to be like level 50, but he's got a bit of turn meter control, and that's in terms of increasing your speed. And he's also got a revive ability, which is really strong for faction wars. So he's a fusible champion. But you can see here, Lizardmen struggle big time. Let's move on to Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers are another faction which really struggle outside of legendary champs. So we've got Fleshmonger. Fleshmonger is MVP of this group. He's the only one who's got that AoE decreased defense chance. I would suggest you build him out if you've got him, because you're probably going to need him for faction wars. Even to level 50, he's just got to have enough accuracy to land that move and enough defensive stats to stay alive. Other than that, he's not there for your damage. He's there to enable damage from other people. Greybeard is great here. Nullhorn is also great. Both of them really good for crowd control and letting your damage dealers have a go. Taurus probably can do some work here in terms of like throwing out damage through poison now. He's got a really good poison mechanic. I think the best couple of champions for me in this faction are actually Basher, who's a Void epic, and probably Steel Skull, who's a really good healer protector. But Lizardman without legendaries is slow. It's just like, Skinwalkers without epics, without legendaries, is just slow, hard yards. Really tough to do. Ursine actually could be, Ursine Ironhide could be quite a valuable champion here. AoE decrease attack, and he does a pretty decent amount of damage. So not a bad one to sort of work on if you need him. We do have Rain Beast with an ability to revive, but it's very conditional and it's quite hard to activate. So he used to be much better than he is. It's kind of like he's in the okay box here for one area. I probably wouldn't build him out, but there's so few options that you might have to. Let's move on to Orcs. Look at the difference between Lizardmen, then Skinwalkers, then Orcs. Orcs is just like epic, epics, and they are great epics. Seer, obviously being a void epic, is going to be harder to get, but she does a bunch of stuff. So I put her in a great area for decreased defense. She doesn't decrease defense, she actually brings a weaken, but similar type of ability. She does a ton of damage. She rips buffs off of the enemies, which, you know, when you get to later stages of faction wars, the enemies have got a ton of buffs. She also does crowd control. When you rip those buffs off, she can sleep them. Sandlashed, really good champion here. Does a ton of damage and some good crowd control. And she's got a lot of team protection. She should probably be on the team protection box as well. Sargala, AoE decreased defense, MVP of that for this group. Brask, if you don't have legendaries which heal you, is the best healer in the faction. And probably a must if you've got him. Ultimate Gaelic is fantastic in this faction. Turn meter control, a lot of damage. Really good for bosses. And then there's actually a couple of champions here for turn meter control, which I've never really used a lot, but I've been told they do work. And I did check their abilities and they seem solid. So Blood Feather and Raider, both of them will do a ton of work to help you on boss fights, keeping that turn meter down. Raider also brings a bit of crowd control as well, so good kind of double up there. Okay, let's look at Demonspawn next. So Demonspawn, again, like a really good faction for just like epics which do work. Umbral, brilliant damage, brilliant crowd control. Padma, high damage and AoE decrease attack. You've got Nazana, Team Protector, AoE decrease attack. You've got another AoE decrease attack in Infernal Baroness. She's also a good healer stroke protector. She's got veils and stuff. I still use Diabolist, who's a free champion. I use her in my level 21 faction war team. Still, even though I've got a whole bunch of legendaries, she's still in the team because I rely on her for turn meter control and crowd control. I would rather bring her in than a Nifui Blood Twin who hits like a truck. Yeah, that's coming back to my point earlier around damage versus control. She is more valuable to me than a void legendary. Allure is an MVP of this faction. She brings a small version AoE decreased defense. It's not really why she's in there. She's in there to crowd control and to turn meter control. On the bosses, she will finish the bosses off by herself. That's how strong she is. Fellhound is good here with some healing and protection and crowd control if you put him in a stun set. Marquis, whatever, is good as well for a bit of turn meter control and crowd control. Person that we don't really love in this game who's actually good in faction wars is Tannix. So Tannix is another one of the free champions. I think she's at like maybe day 210. She's got heals, protection. She's got turn meter control. She's actually really strong for faction wars. Okay, so let's move on to the Undead faction. Again, a faction with a ton of options. Really loads of options here. So some great epics in the faction. Husk with crowd control, one of the best crowd control abilities in the game for an epic. He's got an AoE stun. He's also got a high damage output. You've got Zelatar coming in like the great column for some crowd control. He does AoE sleeps, and he's got healing and protection. Good champion for faction wars. Morsian Mage is just kind of like standout protector, healer, overall support champion for this faction. Gordrab does a load of work here, reviving whole team, which is massive for faction wars. He's also got a bit of turn meter control in terms of increasing speed and a bit of healing as well. You've got other ones like Seeker who can come in and just kind of keep you moving quick and provoke. You've got Grinner as another revive champion in the faction, which is really valuable. Even someone like Seducer, so he's a void, rare, really good AoE decrease attack and some protection and healing. He actually helped me through some of the boss fights with his block debuffs. Block debuffs is massive in some of these boss fights. So really good champion here. Definitely worth your time. Can be run as a 50. And then there's a couple of champions that literally I wouldn't consider outside of Faction Wars. So Stitched Beast drops turn meter by 100%, massive for boss fights. Doomscreech, he's actually a good rare to be fair, but he's got increased speed, he's got increased defense, just generally like a really good solid team player type of champion. And then you've got some damage dealers in here. So you've got Dark Elf Hane, who's another one of the free champions. Good champion for this damage output he does, or she does. Catacomb Counselor has got the ally attack, so it enables a load of damage. If you pair Catacomb Counselor up with someone like a Banshee, then you can get, it's certainly like a stun Banshee would be amazing, because you just get additional hits off with that A1 and additional chances to stun. And Banshee is actually one of the few that's got the AoE, even at small version, decreased defense here. So she becomes quite a big part of this group if you do not have the legendaries. So good faction, should be an easier one for you to complete. Dark Elves then. Dark Elves it's probably got the most options, I'd say, out of all of the factions. You've got multiple people that can do AoE decrease defense, AoE decrease attack, and they also just like feature in other areas of the comps. So Madame Cerise, MVP of the faction, like AoE decrease defense, AoE decrease attack, and crowd control with her fears. You've got Spider, AoE decrease defense, AoE decrease attack. He also does AoE weaken, so really good champion here. Coldheart, we know about Coldheart. She's insane. Turn meter control, damage output. Luria, really good champion for crowd control and for turn meter control. You've got people like Lua, high damage, high turn meter control. Sylar, high damage, high potential crowd control in a stun set, or just high damage output if you build her that way. People like Painkeeper that can heal, protect, speed you up as well. So lots and lots of options. One of the MVPs, though, that people don't talk about is Fang Cleric. He has got a revive ability which will help you get those 3 stars. People don't build him out. This is the place where you can use him. Crimson Helm's got revive on death, so that's not a bad other option. He's also got good crowd control with those provokes. And you've got people like Captain Tamelia, God tier for healer, protector for this faction. Okay, let's move it on to Night Revenants. So Night Revenants, quite a few options here. Most of them in the epics, to be honest. You've got Miscreant Monster, MVP of the faction. He's going to stun, he's going to heal, he's going to shield, he's going to ally protect. He's got tons in his kit. Senacia and Skull Crown, amazing combo, tons of damage, healing, crowd control. If you put them in stun sets, both of them really, really good champions. We've got Doom Priest, actually only comes into the healer protector column, but is really, really good at it. So don't sleep on Doom Priest. Meant to have a second Senacia in there. Don't sleep on Doom Priest, really good champion. We've got people like Executioner as a rare, so he's a farmable rare. He's got good crowd control. He's got good turn meter control as well. Really good rare for Faction Wars. And another one that kind of stands out in the epics is Golden Reaper. AoE decrease attack and turn meter control in terms of speeding you up. Also got its ability to try and bring back one of your abilities quicker. Sepulchre's in there as well. Kitist can come in and do some damage for you. So lots of options in the Night Revenants, but mainly in the epic category. So last faction then is going to be the Dwarves. Dwarves is slim. It's slim pickings for Dwarves. No AoE decreased defense outside of legendaries. We've got a couple of AoE decreased attacks who are both really good champions. Grizzled Jarl comes out MVP of the group. He does damage, AoE decreased attack, and he's got increased defense, block debuffs, really good champion. Rockbreaker is good for crowd control and damage, protecting your other champs. Gala comes in and can do a ton of damage for you. I would suggest if you've got Gala, build her up because she's going to help you a ton in this faction, mainly because you don't have an AoE decreased defense. So she's got abilities which ignore defense. She's going to chunk through people's defensive comps pretty fast. Rear guard, she guards your rear. She is going to be strong in this faction as well. AoE decreased defense, attack and protection and healing. And then there's a couple of rares which do a bit of work, but not a lot really. Healer protectors in terms of Master Butcher and Grumbler. But Dwarves is a section which is tough to do if you do not have a couple of the epics that I talked about here, or one or two of the legendaries. Like Tormund comes in, is massive here. Morley is massive here as legendary. People like Mountain King obviously speak for themselves. So much damage. Trunda, she doesn't even need a team. She kills them all. So guys, that is my my tier list, stroke guide sheets for Faction Wars. I will link it in the video. You have access to this sheet, and we can update it as and when we see fit. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's more helpful than me just throwing a number against a champion on a tier list. I've been Hell Hades. Good luck with Faction Wars. I'll catch you later.